Hey guys, Angie Atkinson here with QueenBeing.com. Today I'm going to do something that I promised you I would do in my last video, and that is to begin to cover all of these wonderful ideas that my SPAN members gave me for content. So we're going to start with the first one in my lineup, which is why you feel the need to be alone so much when you're going through narcissistic abuse and narcissistic abuse recovery, as well as why you also feel lonely, but why those feelings are two completely separate things, and why the isolation of the narcissist actually causes you to stay alone more often than you would normally, if that makes any sense at all. All right, I think it does if you've been there. Stick with me. Let's do it. Okay, so you know how it feels when you are in a room full of people and yet you still feel completely alone. I'm just going to turn my phone down really quick here because apparently I can't seem to not have, what are they called? Notifications during this time. So I'm just going to turn that off. All right, that way we won't be interrupted again because I know that's annoying. All right. Anyway, so you know how it feels when you're in a room full of people and yet you still feel completely alone, right? Well, this is exactly what many, survivors of narcissistic abuse tell me that they experience. And it's a pattern, that I even found in myself after I realized what I had been dealing with for so long during the narcissistic situations, abuse situations in my own life, right? So, and I think because of the fear, the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment, or all of those, some combination of those things of being tortured by a narcissist, personally, I didn't even want to talk about it. And I hear that now. A lot of victims and survivors, they won't talk about it to most people in their lives, especially even those that they're closest to, because, you know, it's very difficult for them. And the truth is that even when partially because people just don't get it, let's be honest. But even when you are in a situation where you appear to be totally fine and are capable of having a nice, friendly conversation, you may not even realize there's anything wrong at all. You may be like, well, I'm fine. But the fact is that even with great social skills, there can be an underlying feeling of isolation for you, even as a survivor, and especially if you're still in it. And it kind of feels like a dull ache, like a weight on your chest almost. Do you know what I'm talking about? And I think, what a lot of my clients say and what I've heard so often is that people feel like they don't know how to be vulnerable anymore. They find themselves feeling very gun shy, consistently on alert, that kind of thing, right? And that is directly because emotional abuse, not to mention physical and even deeper forms of psychological abuse like gaslighting and things like that, can really teach us to shut the hell up, right? To stop talking about ourselves. And, this can actually lead to our becoming paralyzed in certain ways. One of which is, developing the need to be alone. Yeah, because you feel like you can't really deal with the day to dayness of it all. You know what I mean? And well, let's talk about that for a minute. Okay, so why do survivors of narcissistic abuse have so much trouble feeling really connected to people? And why do we so often find the need to be alone after any sort of social interaction? Hint, it's probably because you're an empath, but we'll get to that. Why do we so often find the need to be alone after those interactions? What is so important? What makes us want to be alone? Why do we find the idea of certain types of interactions, incredibly overwhelming, to the point that we become paralyzed and we hide inside like these little cocoons that we've created for our lives? Why do we do that? Well, let's start answering those questions by taking a look inside our situations from an intellectual standpoint, shall we? Let's do it. So, taking away from let's just strip it of all the emotional aspects, okay? What it comes down to is that you're in a very uncomfortable position. When you're dealing with a narcissist in your daily life. And in some ways, you know what, we're taught that everything we think and believe is just wrong, not good enough, or at the very least, no one validates us. And we actually begin to believe the lies that the narcissist has been telling us about ourselves, right? And that can be incredibly painful, obviously, but a lot of times we don't even realize it's happening. And in most cases, these situations are created without our consent, whether we've been fooled into becoming enmeshed with them by being, you know, seduced into it or we are born into that shit, right? Either way, and often cases it's both, you know, and that's unfortunate. But what you need to know is that, as you go through this, you're going to feel abandoned. You're going to feel lonely sometimes, and at the same time, part of you is going to want to be alone all the time. It's just easier that way. You don't have to feel all the anxiety and stress and pressure of having to deal with other people's issues, other people's energy, that kind of stuff, right? To say it's overwhelming would be an absolute understatement. Okay. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we are in an almost suspended state at this point when we're in this part of the recovery, because whether we're still stuck in the toxic relationship or we've actually moved on and are going through the recovery itself, either way, we can still feel that sense of just suspension in the world. Like our life is just in a holding pattern. I call it limbo. Nobody wants to be in limbo. You want to know where you're going to be, how it's going to go, where's your real home? You know what I'm saying? Whether it's proverbially or otherwise, where's your real home? And when you're in that constant state of suspension, that constant state of limbo, you just are waiting for the thing to happen, whatever the thing happens to be. And then when you're dealing with a narcissist, it's often waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for the next part of the cycle to happen. It's freaking exhausting, you guys. All right. So, yeah, I would say that saying it's overwhelming is is absolutely an understatement, right? So as we desperately seek closure, we have to accept the truth of what we've experienced, right? So, and the truth is that it's so much more complicated than you think, so much more complicated than it even sounds, right? But there's good stuff here. You, my friend, are obviously on the right path right now, and you know why? Because here you are consuming this information. You're watching this video right now. And that proves that in fact you are on the right path. All right? Yeah. Since the narcissist has become, I'm just going to say this, it's going to be kind of bold and kind of rude. Don't be mad, all right? But the narcissist is in most cases a walking clusterfuck of confusion, anger, love bombing, and abuse cycle spinning bullshit. Yep. You have been seduced, whether it's by a parent or not. But in any case, you have become a source of narcissistic apply unwillingly, by being seduced into it. So let's just explain what that might be. Let's say the narcissist in your life is your spouse or partner. And if you're being honest, you were likely seduced with promises of having someone on your side or of a soulmate or whatever your version of that was. And ultimately, you were brought in thinking, hey, this is my prince or princess charming. This is the person I've been waiting for my whole life, right? And that sucks because inevitably, excuse me one second. Sorry, I had a little tickle. Inevitably, if it was if you're in that situation, it's just horribly painful because you believe one thing you're brought in, and then all of a sudden the wool's pulled off your eyes, and you're like, holy crap, what did I get myself into, right? Now, if it's a parent or a parental figure, it probably looked more like, I'm the only person who really loves you, the only person who will always be there for you, so you better do exactly what I want, or you risk being completely abandoned in the world, you know. And of course, as always, they're playing on certain basic fears that we as humans have when they do that, some of our biggest fears. In either case, what it looks like is that, if you don't know, if you don't do what I want when I want, you will be alone. And the narcissist knows instinctively that everyone's secretly afraid, on some level at least, of ending up completely alone and unloved in the world. Whether we admit it or not, we're all scared of that just a little bit. Okay. Interestingly enough, the narcissist, him or herself, is also incredibly afraid of that, and that's kind of how they project this onto you. In addition, share their issues with you, right? And that is why you won't often see a narcissist be single for a long time, because inevitably they tend to grab hold of one branch before they let go of the last one. You know what I'm talking about? So, to avoid confusion here, let me just say what that means. I mean that most narcissists will secure a new form of supply before letting it go. And quite honestly, the narcissistic harem theory, which I don't know, I don't think that I named it that, but I've used that term a lot, is that narcissists will inevitably, develop a sort of harem around themselves. So, like in the case of, say a narcissistic spouse, they may be connected to you, to a parent, to several other people of the opposite or same sex, depending on your orientation. And they might have their fingers in all these different types of, like I've said before, honeypots, right? And so they just want to make sure that if you happen to leave them, they've got backup, right? And that's bullshit, you guys, because a real relationship means that you commit to one another and you get through that stuff together. But when the narcissist is involved, you get through that shit, they just keep acting like they're going to act, and you learn how to deal with it within yourself. So here's the hidden blessing in being with a narcissist, okay? If you've been involved with a narcissist, the hidden blessing is this. I thought I just turned off the sound over here. If you have been in a relationship with a narcissist, you have to know something. You are now certifiably strong. Okay? You can get through things that most people have not dreamed of getting through because the emotional abuse, the mental torture, and all of this stuff. If you're sitting here right now watching this video, that means you're on your way to recovery because that means you've recognized the issue. Okay? You've discovered it, and here you are learning how to understand it. So, my friend, you are on your way. Don't beat yourself up anymore. Just keep learning, keep understanding, keep feeling it, and you will get there, I promise you. All right? Moving along. All right. So, like I said, the narcissist is going to often run parallel relationships in order to avoid being alone. That is how scared they are of actually being alone and being lonely in the world. Most narcissists don't don't like to spend any time alone. So you may, in addition to the fact that you might be dealing with jealousy in a relationship with one if you don't realize it, a lot of times a narcissist will need so much of your time because they can't stand to be by themselves. They have no, if they're by themselves, they might as well just be staring at a wall because there's really nothing else there for them. They need a person to suck energy from. And my friend, I'm sorry, but if you're in that situation, especially in a spouse type situation, you might be the person they're sucking the energy from, mostly the primary supply. And that's painful, but you also don't want anybody else to be the primary supply, right? Because then they wouldn't be with you. And that might be better for you, but that's something that you have to decide yourself. All right. In the case of a romantic situation, your narcissist may exhibit extreme jealousy when other potential suitors are near, or are involved in your life in any way. Whether you'd really go there or not is really not an issue for the narcissist because if he or she feels threatened by someone, the jealousy is going to flare right up, right? And often this is actually just a projection of the narcissist's own indiscretions on you. So as in the narcissist is cheating on you or at least considering it, and so they become hyper vigilant. And a lot of times narcissists will do this awesome thing that they call emotional cheating. It's not awesome, it's horrible. It's actually probably equally or more painful for the slighted spouse or whatever than it would be if it were physical cheating because they get emotionally close to someone else and they do this of course by love bombing and all the same crap they did to get it with you. But what happens is that when you're to the point in the relationship where the narcissist can't say a nice word to you most of the time, and then you find out that they're over there having a ha 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 conversation with somebody else, especially if they're the same, if there's someone who's a potential suitor, whether regardless of your sexual orientation, whoever that person is, you know what I'm saying? But often this is, this is simply them reaching for the next thing. Anyway, I've already talked about that, so let's move on. Okay. So on the flip side of it, this is the other thing that really sucks about this narcissist stuff. Another thing, as you are finding yourself being called, if you find yourself, if you find the narcissist accusing you of cheating, being super jealous, beating you up all, mentally, emotionally, all that kind of stuff, on the flip side of it, if you have the nerve to ask a single question about what they're doing when potential suitors are in their own lives, you end up dealing with the sickening feelings of potential betrayal all by yourself for a number of reasons. Because first of all, you obviously can't talk to the narcissist about it because if you ask even a simple normal question that a normal spouse could ask their spouse and get a response about, the narcissist will, what do you mean? You don't trust me? Of course, they expect blind trust. And even when you catch them in a lie, they still continue to expect blind trust because they have absolutely no empathy for you and the potential reasons that you might feel nervous or jealous, right? So, you secretly begin to wonder, gosh, maybe he's right, or maybe she's right. Maybe I really am a nut job, right? No, you're not. Just a little hint. You probably aren't because, yeah, they're going to call you jealous, crazy, etc. And yeah, they're going to say you're making up things in your head. And you know the drill. You know how this goes, right? Just remember that listening to your gut means tuning into your intuition, your divine self, and your divine connection to your higher power or the universe, however you see it, is all the same thing. You know, don't ignore that feeling in your gut. Don't ignore it. Trust yourself when you feel something strongly. You're going to have to learn how to trust yourself again, okay? Because after you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, you cannot, you know, you cannot continue to live the same way, or you're going to find yourself in a position where you're still being controlled by someone, whether it's the narcissist or not. You can't, you have to learn to control your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own perceptions. We're going to get to that. So, part of your issue is part of the reason that you struggle so much with this is that most of the time when you tend to attract narcissists, you have the ability to really feel what everyone around you feels. And this especially is true. Oh my gosh, I can't seem to get these notifications to stop. I'm sorry, you guys. I have a really busy schedule, and I'm being blown up by a particular awesome person who is telling me that I have a client thing coming, so I'm going to wrap this up really quick. All right. Okay. This is especially true with someone you love or spend a lot of time with. You're an empath, is the thing. Okay. So let's get to that. The fact that you're probably an empath, when the narcissist is overwhelming you with the pressure of being responsible for his emotions, you find yourself forever spinning, forever trying to fix them. And my gosh, it's so exhausting. You probably say, God, I'm just tired. I'm just tired. And what you mean is maybe you're not physically tired, or you're physically tired because you're so mentally exhausted by this crap that you deal with every day. But then while you're still in it, you probably find yourself sort of saving up your energy, right? Because you know that at some point the narcissist is going to need to, suck it out of you, right? So you probably don't talk to people about anything serious outside of the narcissist if you can avoid it. And you probably literally can't handle one more straw on your proverbial camel's back. So you isolate yourself in order to, begin to recharge between abuse sessions with a narcissist, right? Even if the narcissist is being nice, they still require your full attention. And if you aren't willing to give that to them, you struggle, and you have to deal with them trying to control every second of your time when you're with them, and even when they're not with you if they can. So it's exhausting to say the very least. And once you do get out, you may continue to isolate yourself because whether it's out of habit or out of a need to try and protect yourself from future narcissists in the world, other narcissists, or both, and even if you might still feel lonely sometimes, you might choose to remain alone just because it's more peaceful that way, or because you're just too tired to deal with the bullshit anymore, right? So that's a difficult spot to be, but who could blame you? Eventually you'll get to the point where you want to change the situation, and you realize that you've forgotten how to even be in a relationship that's normal. What is normal anyway? But, healthy. You might find that you prefer to avoid any intimate connection at all, or that you just prefer, a one night stand situation. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Take care of your sexual needs, move on. I'm not judging you if that's the case, so don't think that. Okay. But what I'm telling you is that maybe that's okay for you for now. But if you're going to do that, please use protection and don't hurt other people in the process. Okay. Try to not create babies in that process if you can avoid it, because it's just only going to complicate everything. Right. But just personal advice from me to you. But you might find, that this can even be the case if you are dealing with a situation where your parent was the narcissist. You might prefer to avoid all intimate connections just because it's not really worth your time. And when I say intimate, I don't necessarily just mean sexual. I mean close friendships. I mean, you might just keep yourself so closed off to the entire world in an effort to protect yourself that you just kind of, like blow up the whole idea of having any emotional support whatsoever. And if that's the case, my friend, you got to stop that. You're going to be very unhappy soon if you're not yet. You've got to learn to to connect with other people again. Being a narcissist tends to not only cause you to distrust yourself, but also the whole world around you. Okay. And when you try to change the situation, you might feel incredibly paralyzed and overwhelmed, but you have to work through that. Okay. And here's why, because, you know, here's how you're going to do it. Let me just start there. Okay. First of all, you've got to admit to yourself that you are or were with a person who was toxic and who was probably a narcissist or someone with narcissistic personality disorder. You have to recognize that you were in a codependent relationship with them, or you are still in a codependent relationship with them. Okay. You have to acknowledge that you were mentally and emotionally abused and manipulated. And that is very hard for a lot of us, you guys, because we're smart. Most of us who have been in these relationships are not stupid. We're smart people who know what's up. And so we're pissed off that we allowed ourselves. We're mad at ourselves for allowing ourselves to be manipulated, and we're embarrassed that it happened to us. We don't want everybody to know that we fell for this and that we allowed ourselves to be treated that way, because on every other level, people would expect that we weren't that person. And even if they don't, we know better. We know we're not that person, and yet we still allowed ourselves to fall into that. So, you know, but when you're ready to heal, you've got to acknowledge it, whether it's just to yourself, to the whole world. It doesn't matter. You don't have to tell the whole world. You have to tell yourself and understand that you were, in fact, being mentally and emotionally abused and manipulated, and that you were in a codependent relationship with a toxic narcissist. Okay, you feel me? All right. Then you have to begin to understand how and why it happened to you. Okay, this will help you to prevent it in the future, right? So while you did play a role in that relationship, obviously, you. Okay, be right back.
With your account. It's urgent, however, that you contact us immediately concerning your eligibility for lowering your interest rate. Press 1 now. Your eligibility expires today. Consider this your final notice. Press 1 to be.
This is what I'm interrupted with. Anyway, let me get back to where I was. Okay. So eventually, while obviously acknowledge that you did play a role in the relationship and that you do need to take responsibility for your part of that, you also have to realize that this really isn't your fault. Okay? You have to realize that you really did get pulled into this stuff under false pretenses. I promise you, most of us did not sit there and say to ourselves, "Oh, I'd love to be in an emotionally abusive relationship that makes me want to completely isolate myself from the world," right? Who said that? No. We thought we were getting soulmates out of this deal. Okay? We thought things were going to be so much better for us. We thought this was the person that we were supposed to be with. Okay? That's different than a lot of people understand. So, even, you have the option to change it, though. That's what you have to recognize. The option and the right to change this whole deal. And yes, this even applies when family members are involved, my friend. You understand? Family members are not exempt from this shit. Okay? You have the right to make them take responsibility. And if they won't, you have the right to walk away. You have the right to feel peace. You have the right to feel loved. You have the right to feel safe and to determine who you are. You have the opportunity to decide exactly what happens from here on out. You do. You. You feel me? You have the responsibility to change your life for the better. Not just for yourself, but also for other people you love. Whether you have children or you have dear friends, whoever you consider your family. Okay? You feel me? So, this is what it comes down to. Right now, I'm going to ask you to pause the video for a moment and grab yourself a pen or a piece of paper, or hey, just open up a text document over there on the side real quick, right? And if you don't want to do that, just leave me a comment below with this, what I'm about to share with you, okay? So, we're going to ask yourself a few questions. Are you ready? Come back when you're ready. Okay, you're back, right? All right. All right. So, here's, let's start here, okay? So I'm going to ask you a few questions. And I want you to be brutally honest with yourself when you answer. Now, you don't have to give me the answers in public if you don't want to. Depending on your circumstances, you may not even want to share these answers with anyone just now, and that's okay. Okay? So let's start here. First, are you ready to admit what you're dealing with? Yes or no? Are you ready to say, this happens, this is happening, this has happened? If so, let's move on to the next question. You can pause the video between questions if you want to answer right now, and then come back and finish the next question. So give me a minute to do that. La la la. Okay. Next up, can you figure out what unconscious motives might have led you to choose this person, and what can you do to do better for yourself next time? Could your parent or significant people in your childhood have had narcissistic tendencies? That's the next question. Could your parent or your other significant people in your childhood have had narcissistic tendencies? Okay? All right. Blah, blah, blah. In case you need to pause the video, we'll move on to the next question. All right. Do you base your self-worth on being connected to someone who has some status or power? Do you prefer to be passive and let someone else make the decisions? Answer those questions. All right. So I'm pausing slowly between questions so you can pause and then come right back to me. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit more of a question right now. Get ready. Here we go. Do you feel like you're not good enough? Do you think that your negative self image might be a result of what others have told you about yourself and not actually the truth? Is that a possibility? Here's a hint. Literally all of the survivors that I've met so far, whether it's, through Skype or Google Hangouts on the phone, people I've met in my group, people who have commented here, have been kind of amazing people. And that probably includes you, my friend. Most of these people are attractive, they're talented, they're well spoken, but because they've been beaten down so much by the narcissist, they don't even know it anymore. Okay? They've forgotten it, or they never knew it because their narcissist was their parent and made sure they didn't know it. You know, Maybe you just need to take another look without the mask of what everyone else thinks, clouding your judgment, clouding your vision. You feel me? All right. So, next question. I would like to know, you know, if you have been in this situation, did you find that the narcissist unloaded their venom on you and or their other primary, sources of narcissistic supply in order to maintain the guise? Let me ask you, have you noticed how just after completely decimating you in a gaslighting episode or an awesome narcissistic rant of rage and hate and injury, narcissistic injury, you know, your narcissist probably seems kind of like, oh, relaxed and happy, and maybe even like, woohoo, he's in a great mood or she's in a great mood, right? Meanwhile, you're over here torn into pieces, right? Dissociating and feeling like you're nothing and probably incapable of normal function as you have to work through the pain on your own in silence, most likely, without any support at all. Because you probably don't even have people that really talk to about it anymore, if any, because it's too exhausting and because there's really no point and because honestly, most people just don't get it. And even if you do have someone in your life who does get it, sometimes you're not even capable of eking out the energy that it takes to send a text when you have just been decimated in this way, right? So, this is something to consider, all right? There's really just understand most people just don't understand, and even if they do, sometimes you don't have the ability to even communicate. You can't even talk sometimes after this stuff, okay? So you learn to function this way. You handle the shit all by yourself, and you start to prefer it. You learn to go it alone, and your first instinct when any issue occurs is to hole up by yourself and figure it out. Have you been there? I have. It's not great, all right? But it does work. And quite honestly, I still prefer, up to a point, my own company when it comes to feeling stressed out or whatever. Okay, it sucks, but I'm okay with it, But I still also connect to people every single day outside of myself, and that's something that you've got to do, even if you do continue to deal with your issues by yourself. It's not your fault the narcissist is so toxic. Okay, it's not something that you can change at all. The fact is that, as always, I'm going to tell you to focus on what you can control if you want to fix this, okay? Not what you can't. Because even if you're still stuck in the relationship, you can still control your own perception. You can still control your own reaction to the narcissist, okay? Start seeing it as an intellectual issue if you want. This works really well for me. Study your narcissist as though he or she is a scientific experiment living right in your house or down the street or whatever. Okay. Learn to label the specific behaviors that you're seeing in them and move forward. And hey, I've got some more good news for you. Like I said earlier, you're already on that because you're here. So you're moving in the right direction. Okay. Start working on your own personal development as you do this. Start figuring out what you really believe and what you really want in your life. You have to practice self love, or at the very, very, very least, self compassion. You might have to work up to self love at this point, but at least have some compassion for yourself, right? But anyway, another thing you can do is get involved with a good support system. Okay, so you're probably like, well, how am I supposed to do that? Especially if you're feeling alone and lonely. Well, I can start you out with my free, private, confidential group. You can visit queenbeing.com/span to join. It's doesn't cost you anything. It's an online group through Facebook, and it'll that page queenbeing.com/span will fill you in on all of that. So, and you can join no charge. It's pretty easy stuff. All right, and the group is amazing and supportive, and we've got some great admins, and I'd really be happy to see you there if you'd like to join me. All right. So, a few more quick tips before I close out for today. All right? That'll help you to kind of get yourself back into the right state of mind and to continue to move forward instead of feeling frozen and isolated and alone. Okay? Try skipping sappy songs for a while. And only listen to happy music. Now that sounds silly, but for obvious reasons, your vibe being the primary one, you know, careful music selection can really help you. I mean, you know what? When I'm going through a tough time, I will intentionally choose. I have this playlist I call "Good Morning Beautiful." it's actually on. It's actually on Google Play Music. I think if you wanted to check that out under Queen Being, "Good Morning Beautiful." But anyway, obvious reasons. I literally organize my playlist by mood and emotion, and it really works for me. I can choose based on my energy at the moment or how I want my energy to be at the moment. So a lot of times I like to do, my morning workouts slash meditations with with really happy, peppy music that it feels empowering to me, and that's it really does get my day started in a great way. And the fact is that there is scientific proof that music can really literally change your life if you want it to, and you can listen to it for free these days if you want to. So why not do it? You know. Anyway, watch inspiring movies. This is another tip for you. Okay, me personally, don't judge me, but I like to watch girl power type movies. Right? For me, those include things that show women who are both girly and crazy freaking smart at the same time. Because, as you might imagine, that's one of the things I've had to deal with in my own life. A prejudice against me because of the way that I look. People assume that I'm stupid or, whatever. Or when I was heavier, people assumed that I was stupid because I was fat. And I'm certainly not skinny now, but now people think I'm stupid for a different reason. And so it doesn't really matter how you look or who you are. They're always going to give you some kind of a predetermined, if you look too much, well, in my case, too girly, people instantly assume that you can't be also crazy smart. So movies like Legally Blonde are quite empowering for people like me. Uh, you know, uh, but the fact is, you know what? I'm an out and proud girly girl. I'm okay with it. But a lot of people assume that means I'm also a dumb blonde. And oh, yeah, you know how much I love that stuff, right? But hey, that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But like I said, movies such as Legally Blonde or those types of movies are more empowering than you might think for someone like me. So find your version of Legally Blonde, whatever that is for you, and give it a go. See how it works for you. Maybe one of the other movies I really love is Practical Magic. It's very female focused, female power based stuff like that, sisterhood, all that. You might enjoy. I don't know. There's so many movies. I'm not going to go into all that. But hey, if you have empowering movies, put them in the comments. I want to know what they are. Maybe I want to watch them too. All right. Okay. Moving right along. If you need to mourn, just do it. Okay, I've said this before, but what you need to do sometimes when you're getting out of one of these relationships, even if you're still in this relationship, sometimes you need to mourn the person you thought you were dealing with. Okay, whether it's your mother or your husband or your wife or whatever, your father, your sister, brother, whoever the narcissist is in your life, when you recognize who they are and what they're all about, excuse me, part of you is going to be like, well, hey, why don't I get to know this person this way? Why don't I get to deal with, you know, a real person, a regular person? Why has this person been covering me, fooling me all this time? Why, you feel fooled, you feel duped, you feel like that person almost died, especially if you leave the person. But even if you haven't left them and you're just in it, you suddenly, it's like the mask comes off your eyes. You suddenly see the world differently and you suddenly understand when you do. And then you're like, holy crap, I can't believe I've been dealing with this so long. Well, you're gonna have to mourn that stuff, and it sounds weird, but you have to go through the sadness to get to the good stuff. So, just limit the amount of time you let yourself wallow, and then decide to keep moving forward into your new better life. You know what I mean? Like I like to go anywhere from a few hours to a week or two, depending on the severity of the situation. A few hours maybe for a particularly painful argument, or up to a week or two for a death in the family or a divorce type of situation. When I got divorced from my ex narcissist, it was 3 weeks. I really felt like someone had died, or actually worse than if someone had died in so many ways. And yeah, it's horrible and painful. Yeah, I sat around and I would like to tell you that I sat around and ate a lot of ice cream, but I didn't. I couldn't even eat for 3 weeks. I was devastated. It was horrible for me. I was in so much emotional pain, and I was so scared. I was suddenly a single mom, and I had this 16-month-old child, and I was barely understood how to be a mom at that point. I didn't know it then, but I knew that I was still new at that stuff, and it was scary for me. But you know what? We survived. So that's what happens. And now, I'm thriving, and that's a very good thing. So, and my younger two children haven't had to deal with that type of stuff at this point. So that's, that's positive. A few hours, you know, is nothing. A few weeks might be a lot, but whatever you need, take the time and set an end date on the time, okay? Another tip for you to keep you going during this time, find something to do. I don't care if you start knitting or you take swimming lessons or whatever. Or hey, if you have an amazing singing voice and guitar playing talent like this one client that I know, well, you could start a little music career, or I don't know, in some people's case, a big music career. You hear me? You hear me? Do it. Okay, on the side, right? You've got to accept and maintain a new forward looking focus if you're ever going to heal, is what it comes down to, okay? Plus, something like this where you join, a local knitting club or get your music career going, whatever, book club, write a blog, whatever, you know, this is going to give you the opportunity to meet people who actually might be interested in some of the same things that you are interested in for real. I know the narcissist pretended to be, or maybe he really or she really was, but then, the other stuff came up. But either way, you know, there is a way to get through that. And one thing that you can do is find new people to hang out with. You don't have to get involved with them on a sexual level or a very deep, intimate level at first. Take your time. Tread water, get in there slowly, one toe at a time and all that stuff. You don't have to rush yourself. You don't have to push yourself to be something that you're not ready to be right now. Okay. So that's all I've got. Now it's your turn. All right. Have you experienced narcissistic abuse? I assume you have if you're still watching right now. Are you still in it or have you moved on? You know, whether or not you actually chose to end it yourself, how are you feeling now? Are you in a lot of pain? Have you gotten past it? Are you over it? Have you struggled with this stuff? And if so, how are you dealing? Share your thoughts and your experiences in the comments below because you just don't know who it might help. All right. All right, and before I go, let me just pass this along. If you have additional questions, comments, things you want to learn about narcissism or narcissistic abuse recovery or narcissistic personality disorder, visit queenbeing.com. I've got tons of articles, videos, downloads, free resources, etc. at queenbeing.com for you. All right. You can also visit narcissismsupportcoach.com if you would like to get free a free 5-day email course that I designed specifically for narcissistic abuse survivors, as well as to learn more information about my coaching programs, personal one-on-one coaching, in addition to the 5-day, in addition to the new group coaching that I'm offering online. And you can also join my SPAN group, which is at queenbeing.com/span for free and without any obligation whatsoever. And then visit booksangieWrote.com if you'd like to pick up one of my books to help you out. You could go there are books starting at 99 cents going up to $4.99. Not very expensive. There are 20 of them. All right. That's all I've got. Have a great week, everybody. I'll see you soon. Thanks.